Good after morning, everybody of all time. Welcome to the listening show, a show you can listen to. Can you imagine? Oh,
What?
oh, nothing. Can you imagine people in the future looking back like this is super important? This is the listening show 77. This is where it all happened. This is it. All the capsule in history.
Arnold Schwarzenegger shows up right here and he goes, "It all started now."
Or who does actually, like someone like David Attenborough sitting in that corner, has a camera with him. And this right here is where Zachary Fisher and Walter gathered together to record the listening show. Episode 77 happened right here. Now I'm not allowed to touch the couch or something like that. Anyway, the moral of the story is it's the opposite.
From that moment on, the world would change forever. And then it would spiral. We say some idea and then we start the company.
The idea is we are gonna not do that.
Today's when time travel started because we like figured out. Oh wait, all you have to do to time travel is
say this
apply
phrase.
salsa, and then you can it works.
Salsa.
And then like someone says that and goes, and when we time traveled back, what we discovered was that this was the crux moment when the first pontification of the established method of time travel would be conjectured.
As a thought exercise, because the joke is we're not going to come up with anything of significance, but if we did, that would cause people to look back and hold listening show episode 77 in such reverence. What could it possibly be? I would guess it would be not a good thing. It would be like if somebody said something that gave somebody else an idea. Like I got this idea that's gonna fix world hunger because Zach said something and he had that idea, and this smart guy took your idea and like, oh, this is kind of where it started. It was actually kind of.
I was inspired by episode 77.
That's the best possible outcome I can think of.
I'm a firm believer in the butterfly effect. That could totally happen.
Oh, if you just give someone it could, but like I'm not betting on it.
Yeah, well, you know,
I'm keeping my money.
You're just a non-believer. So here's my idea of how it would happen. We get the wild hair in our stomach. We're like, hey, let's make a prank call. And boop, 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 boop. Brr, brr. Oh, this is Joe Biden, the president. And then I go, oh, Joe, by the way, I have the idea for how to stop the war. And then he goes, what? Okay. Well, he doesn't hear me very well. And then I go, all you got to do is tell a hilarious joke to good old Putin. And then he'll laugh so hard that he'll be like, nah, we won't go to war.
Instead of slapping the nuclear button, he'll slap his knee. And you'll change the course of history.
Yeah, and then Biden go, oh, that's a good idea.
But he'll forget the joke, and then he'll tell him something else in sincerity that will make Putin laugh.
Yeah.
I don't know. No, nothing political I don't think would happen. Well, actually, I take it back. If something did happen to where we altered everybody for all time, whether it was good or bad, I would probably end up being bad and political. It's just my best guess, right?
Man.
I know, it's just a guess. Maybe I'm dead wrong. What's your best guess? What could ever have her?
My actual best guess has something to do with the fact that I'd probably go into my freaking storytelling fantasy idea and I'd say some idea that inspired somebody else to write a version of my story that's the best story ever told. But that's actually my best guess.
We don't want to change the world though, so keep that to yourself.
Do I want to change the world? Now I'm thinking, do I want to?
What a deep question.
It depends. What am I changing?
Well, I would hopefully, and even then, that's a question. Presumably, you'd want to change it for the better. But even then, do you really? A lot comes with a lot of things. And like you said, it depends. Presumably, it comes with responsibility. And you don't just, I made the world a better place and I can step back. That doesn't happen.
Right.
Good question. Do you want to make the world a better place? Do you really want to make the world a better, or not better? Do you really want to change the world?
So you got to define terms here. What's the world?
And what's
is
better?
The world just? It's just the
people in it.
Yeah, that's just the culmination.
And what's
of
better?
People,
what
right?
I prefer.
Yeah,
I don't.
It's all just conjecture. It's tough.
I'll say this though. Stepping out of this really deep meta crap, I think everybody wants to change the world. I'd want to. I want to make. I would like there to be less suffering. However that's done. If I could make everybody laugh or cure something, like if I had it within me, because I'm a smart guy, I can figure out how to end hunger, whatever, I'd want to do that. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but I have a desire, and I think most people do. I wish I could make the world a better place. It's not like that they have the ability or ever act on it, but I think we all have that desire, right? Most of us. Some people want to watch the world burn, but genuinely, I think most of us we would want to improve things if we could.
So here's my question for you then. Obviously, it's a noble goal to want to remove some suffering if you can, or lessen it. So, but here's the question. My thing is, if I could do one of those things, like if I could either lessen suffering or like equip people better in suffering, what's better? Because so here's, I don't know. There's a math question in there. One is, so the amount of suffering that exists is over 0. We don't know exactly how much that is, but
X.
Is it more noble to try to minimize the 0 or to get closer to the 0 number with the suffering? Or is it better to try to take the number that it is and change it into something else?
There's better ways, or not better. Sorry. There are other ways to say it. One is,
I don't know.
One side has guns. Do you want to give the other side guns or shields, or do you want to take the guns away from the first side? How do you fix this problem? It's escalation or de-escalation.
Well,
that's a way of thinking about it. That's not how I think about it.
No, that's not.
And I understand the duplicitousness of your question.
I'm going to try. It's actually not what I'm trying to say. I'm not describing it very well. What I'm trying to say is, is it better to try to get rid of suffering, or is it better to try to equip people in suffering?
I know what you mean.
To like get through it better, or to like enjoy it.
Because I can't just say, oh no, it's better to get rid of suffering. I can't just say that. It's not that simple. Yeah. I understand that's what I mean by duplicitous, and that it sounds obvious.
So here's another example.
It's obvious.
So one way that suffering happens is that death happens, right? That's a way of suffering. But if you were to talk to some people, that's not exactly how it works, because life is suffering for a lot of people too. So, or like, for example, maybe the fact that like a young kid dies, that's terrible. And some people suffer because of that. And now on the flip side, if there's a person who's been in pain and they've been suffering for a long time and they died, then that's not as bad suffering. In fact, that's kind of a weird relief. So that's more what you're talking about, the duplicitous sort of nature of that question. But I think more what I was saying is, I guess my theory about suffering is that there is so much of it and you can reduce it, obviously, but is it an achievable goal to try to reduce a thing that exists no matter what? Or is it better to try to just say it exists, let's try to do the best with it we can?
Well, yeah, I get all that. But again, we are, unfortunately, I hate picking it apart, but we're going to have to go back to defining terms, because if I want to make the world better, what is it that I'm trying to make better? Death is a factor of life. Do I want to improve quality of life? Do I want people to be more comfortable? Do I want people to get sick less? In what way do I want them to become less unprivileged?
Yeah.
So making the world a better place, or worse, changing the world could mean so many things. So we can start at one end, picking apart what is the world, what's better, and how do you have to deal with it? Or we can jump to the other end and go, generally speaking, like the lowest IQ answer possible. Like I answered, generally speaking, I'd like to make people happier or not think about their perils as much. Generally speaking, that's how I'd like to change the world if I could. Yeah. Do you have a general? I think I know your answer.
You're asking for a framework.
No, I'm asking for a low Q answer. The one that Miss America would give. I want to end world hunger.
I want to begin.
It's that simple. Peace. You know what I mean? So
world peace. Nobody fights ever. World peace. I don't know. So
I think I know. It's been on your mind lately, trying to help you remember how you might change the world.
Tell a better story.
Tell a good story. That's all the answer was.
Okay, so I'm getting back into I have to set the framework.
Do you even want to change the world?
No. I have to establish the framework, because I'm fluctuating perspectives a bunch right now. Like I'm trying to think macro and then min, it's like that in my mind. So the framework should be useful knowledge. What's the useful way to think about that question? And the useful way is like the immediate effect of a thing. And then the more distal effect of something. So what's the best thing you can do now that's also good for later? Maybe that's the best question. That reduces suffering. Is that kind of what you're asking?
No, I'm asking generally speaking.
I can't do that.
Okay, you don't have to fill out that blank field. I was just trying the easy question first.
I know. So, and within the framework that I established, the good for now and good for later, is that the question you want to ask?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to get comfortable here. I'm getting carpal tunnel.
Oh no.
What was your question?
The framework that I'm establishing, because you can see everything from a bunch of different perspectives. you know, in an existentialist standpoint, some people might say death is a good thing about life, you know, and I don't want to get into that weird semantic stuff. I want to stay in like the general, like you're saying, but the framework has to be kind of a forgiving one.
Are you asking me a question?
Yes, I'm saying, I'm asking, do you have, the framework that I established, the useful knowledge framework, what's a useful way to think about this? Is that the way that you're asking that question? Or are you asking it from an existential theoretical standpoint?
From a feeling standpoint, like Miss America,
gosh.
there's no consequence.
I don't think that works.
Practicality to this answer. No, I'm not saying it works. I'm just trying. We can move on because you don't like this question. That's fine.
I think that there's not an honest answer that's that dumb.
Well, I think my answer is honest, and I think it's dumb.
What is it?
I told you my answer. I generally want people to suffer less by making them happy or forget about their suffering.
Yeah, I just don't know that happiness and suffering are dichotomous, because people who are happy suffer all the time.
Sure, but if I could take some away, I would. That's what I want generally.
Okay. I
think there are better goals, and maybe it's not a great goal, but it's not a shit goal, I don't think.
No.
That's all I'm saying. It's just generally speaking. We should move on, though, because you really hate it.
Well, I don't hate it. I just am trying to find a way to answer it honestly. That's not just some generic, yeah, I'd like it if people hurt less. It's like, yeah.
That's what I'm saying, though.
I don't know. Okay, well,
it's okay to want. It's okay. I think it's okay to want people to hurt less. That's the argument I'm making.
I just don't think that's talking about anything. It's not anything new. It's like,
that's why it's the Miss America question.
Well, then that's my answer.
And then say skip instead of shitting on it, and then we'll get to the questions you want to talk about.
My answer is, I wish that people would hurt less.
Yay!
Miss America rocks. She's right. She's so right. She cares. She cares about me. She's beautiful on the outside and the inside. She's beautiful both places. That's funny.
Okay, now you get to ask the question.
Okay.
Unless you want me to do it.
So practically speaking, how does one reduce suffering?
Oh, I was wanting to talk about changing the world and pick that apart. Oh,
what happened?
I don't know. I can't read.
Did our camera get destroyed?
No, it's the buttons on the keyboard.
An error occurred, which is
read the bottom two. One of them is no and yes.
Click the button to keep streaming and recording. The yes button. Click yes.
Says keep.
Yeah, keep. The no button doesn't.
Now what does this one say?
It's running in the background. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, well then it closed. Now I don't know where that happened. There's obviously a button.
Well, still a show you can listen to.
You can still listen to it, and I'll just put this back in editing. We're back. All you saw was a black screen. Sorry. How would I reduce suffering?
How does one do it?
I don't know. We got to define suffering. We're gonna have to go back.
Oh, gross.
In my mind, I was attacking this question of changing the world from the dumbest end.
Let's talk about changing the world
to the most complicated.
Let's talk about changing the world.
All right. Well, the most complicated end starts with defining terms.
Okay. So, as first as establishing the spectrum, there's a lot of people who have changed the world. Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King Jr. Those people changed the world, but so did Hitler and Mao and Stalin and Lenin. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different ways to change the world. Now, some people would say
and you're forgetting lateral, not just on a spectrum of left and right. You have up and down. You have people like those that are up here, and you have people down here like John Brown. Mm-hmm. Do you understand where I'm getting at? Butterfly effect. Did seemingly little thing that affected a lot of people and technically changed the world. But just again, to make it simple, we might have to cut that lower dimension out and just talk about good and bad.
So if we're getting technical,
how complicated do we want to get?
Let's get very, very, very technical here.
Okay.
Technically, every single person who exists has changed the world.
That's my point.
Yes. So that said, when people say, I want to change the world, done, you did it. Good job. You could say that too. Now, I think what people mean is have a big impact on the world in the way that it functions or operates. But I don't think they mean the world, because the world is talking about, and it's an extraction of an idea. It's an extrapolation. The world isn't like the planet. It's like the things in the planet and their interaction with each other. It's relationships and then everything.
World, I think, is more synonymous with reality than planet, or existence than planet.
Yeah.
World is like Matrix. or a video
Our
game.
functional
It's
reality.
Reality is more synonymous, I think. Well, obviously, they don't mean planet. Although that you can change the world, you can change the earth.
The earth.
The earth for
The
reasons.
dirt and the earth.
How complicated do you want to make it? You want to start jumping up the tiers now and say, we're talking about reality. We're talking about how people and the world exist together, and generally
I
speaking,
think that we both know. Let's assume
just
that
go
we're
with
smart and we know what we're talking about when we say the world.
Okay.
But I do like defining terms too. So it's loosely the reality. It's our functional,
Existence.
it's our space
existence.
that our consciousness function
Yeah.
together and interact. Presuming they do interact.
Let's
'cause then there's
define
the
world
theory.
that way.
Yeah. Okay.
And change, that's probably the easiest word aside from the. Okay, what is the? You mean like the, like singular, or the? And what is?
The plural.
No. Change, good or bad, whatever. World. Now, better or worse is going to be the one I don't want to get too caught up on, but it's worth taking apart a bit.
Gosh. So then, because you can get really existentialist or nihilist with better.
We can
too.
get trapped. We can get trapped here. I just don't want to.
So what's defining what's good is again important. So it's good.
We're gonna dump in the weeds for no more than 10 minutes, but we're gonna have to strip around to try to make better or worse.
Assuming what's good is life, which is a little too general still.
But
human life.
Probably we can get 60% of people on board with this. That life is good. I'm gonna go ahead and just jump on that side.
Okay. Here I am. I should leave the talking about what we believe things to you, because I just like to tear down everything. Like instantly, as soon as I said life, I realized, but we don't protect viruses because there's less like, I just instantly want to tear down my own argument.
Which is good. I think you should think that way.
Yeah. So sentient human life as perceived by us, that's what we value. Okay. So in that sense, we would value that there is more of it or a better quality of it. Maybe both. Maybe both is a
What's
measure.
better, quantity or quality of human life?
Maybe if there's both. Maybe if it's better and there's more of it. Maybe that's good.
Again, just so we might get an answer, I think we're going to have to keep things mildly general. As long as you acknowledge the differences in terms, then we can go. Most people would say that better means better quality and quantity of life. Generally speaking, we'll just go down this road. Like imagine there's 10 people in this room and one of them's choosing this path as we're defining it. And now
we're walking in the right direction.
What's his answer going to be? We can walk back and go, let's take this one and say that quality is better. And then we got to pick one road to get an answer. Okay. That's my method. We can change our answer later, but
sure. I'm with you. Let's, this is just a fun little aside, but if you had to pick one, quantity or quality of life, to me, it seems like quality would be better.
I would say, what's the line?
Assume that whichever one you pick, the other metric is static. It stays the exact same. If you pick the quality of life, there's always going to be exactly 6 billion people or however many there is. There's never going to be more or less. If one dies, another one replaces it.
If we
instantly.
say we want more life, but the quality does not go up or down.
It stays static as it is right now. What would be better?
I would say quality.
Yeah.
But I'm not God, but if I made the world in my image, I'd have 1,000 people that were perfect or really good, which basically makes me Thanos. I was trying to make a quote from the movie, but I couldn't think of a quote that said, half of them must die for their half to thrive. There's no such line like that, but I was going to make that joke. Anyway, that's where I tend to go to. But, and this is an aside, I think that's the same. I think generally those who have been in bad positions in the past who have changed the world tend to think that way. Quality of life, meaning I'll sacrifice more lives to make lives better for these people, tends to be the mindset inversely of the people who have made it better, which tend to be these people have a right to live regardless of quality of life. It's the opportunity to make things better or worse. I think that's typically how most good people in the past have been. You mentioned Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King Jr., and Burger King. All those people. You're making everybody, like giving more people, more things to more people.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm wrong in thinking that way.
Burger King.
That's an aside.
More things to more people. That's a great slogan for them. Burger King. More things to more people. They don't even call it food.
I really
could have. It's just our things that we're giving you.
I slipped in Burger King. I could have slipped in have it your way. I should have slipped that in. Like
that's what quality of life is about. Is having it your way. That's so funny. Things.
Okay, what's dumb
Okay.
is that's kind of true. If that's correct,
Yeah.
if quantity of life is a greater good than quality, that means the freedom
It
to
means
choose
Hitler
a
was
better or
justified.
worse life. You get to choose your own quality.
Yeah.
But those who don't exist otherwise can't even choose it. So whatever.
It's kind of
That's an
messed up.
aside. It's messed up.
Because Hitler was right if that's the case. So we obviously know, like, no, because that's, subjective. Is the quality is subjective all the time. To me, I think I would actually go with quantity because first of all, it's disingenuous to look at it as static. We're just doing it in a vacuum because it's so weird.
We're eliminating variables.
It's so weird the solutions you come up with when you put things in a vacuum.
Like people?
Right. You can't actually do that with this.
I meant literally like as a dictator, and I'm trying to make the world a better place by killing people by putting them in a vacuum. I was making a joke.
I get it.
Because I'm a dictator apparently, or whatever that word is.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So looking at it realistically, obviously, if you can improve both, that'd be great. But like, I think I've made this observation before as of other people, but technically the more people there's been, the quality's kind of gotten itself better as long as like there's an underlying moral, and sometimes even without that, the more people there are, the more people kind of behave.
Well, I don't think we have a good correlation. I mean, generally, maybe there is, but we can't say because there are more people, the quality of life is better. Maybe it's panned out that way, but it's not.
It's
not
it's not
causation.
correlation. Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
Yeah. That's
No,
true.
it's fair observation, but it's also not an accurate observation. We haven't lived the duration of all human life or all of human existence, so we really don't know. We think we know, and we know what we know, but who knows what we know?
It's very possible that everything that was recorded that we read back on was only the worst stuff about everything.
Or it's wrong. Shoot, we
Yeah.
don't know anything is what I'm saying. Anyway.
That's true.
All right, let's jump back. Change the world. What would change in the world mean? And then maybe we could decide if we want to change the world or not.
Mm-hmm.
So, world is existence, changes for better or worse.
It might be better to say impact the world, make an impact on the world. Because change.
Well, then
again,
you
we've established
can't
technically
impact
you're
without
changing.
changing.
Yeah. Well, the world changes constantly. If you have a greater impact, if your impact on the change is greater than most people's, maybe that's what we mean by change.
Maybe the word you're looking for is influence.
Okay.
Or maybe you're not directly causing the change, but you're
Influence or
inspiring
impact.
change.
Yeah.
You're distancing yourself from the change as far. All right, fine. Generalize it. How would you influence the world if you wanted to?
Tell a better story.
Okay. Why?
Because to me, those are the things. That's the thing that changes the world in the biggest way.
That's why I think murdering everybody would change the world in the biggest way.
Yeah, but why would somebody murder somebody unless they were told a story that convinced them to do so? I think
you're trying to say it's the most important thing.
I think it has
What
the
good is the
potential.
story if they're all dead and they can't hear the stories? I think if you're trying to change the world, blow the planet up.
Well,
You said you wanted. I said why? You said because it changes the world the most. Do you actually think that?
okay, again, we define world as the space in which all of our consciousness, all of our perceived consciousness interact and are created and are destroyed. That's what the world is. It's like this place where all of these people who seem to be awake are all interacting with each other. So that said, the thing that influences the most of those people, I mean, death does, but there's this weird amorphic thing where even if a bunch of people die, there's still a bunch of us left. So let's say in some crazy weird thing that the world was destroyed, then this is not an exercise that's useful. So let's assume everybody stays alive. Generally, the people are alive. So that said, everybody's alive. The thing that changes the most people, the fastest, is a good story. A good story is what convinces people to go and kill a bunch of people. Or a good story is what
I
convinces
think you want to
people
change the world the most for the better, not change the world the most for the sake of changing it the most.
Well, it'd be really easy to change it just for the sake of changing
That's
it.
what I'm saying. I don't think that's what you want.
Right. I know. I'm just saying. So, but I'm talking about specifically stories. You could tell a story to change the world for the worse very, very easily. People do it all the time. Constantly. I mean, that's what Hitler did. I mean, it's just literally the story is that the Jews suck and we rock, and if the Jews were gone, things would be a lot better. And it was a very believable story because in that weird framework, it was technically better, for them at the time. Even though if you pull outside of that, it's like, oh no, that's clearly not a very good story. It didn't last very well for him, for sure, or for any of those Jews. Pretty messed up story. So you could tell a better story, and then hopefully a lot of people will have lives and it'd be better for everybody. You know, if you tell the best story, my theory is that things would get ultimately better.
It sounds like you want to make the biggest change for the better.
Obviously.
More
I said that.
specifically, no, you said you want to change the world the most or make the biggest change. Like, well, the biggest change.
But I
don't
meant
think,
that. You know what I meant.
Yeah, but I'm just being an asshole in defining terms. Let me pick you apart since you're finally making a stance on something. Normally, it's your job to tear it down. So that's why I was just trying to make sure the terms were clear. You want to change the world for the better and with the biggest impact or biggest influence. That's a fair thing to want.
Okay, so time out though. Before, that's obviously what I want, but I wasn't talking about what I want. I was talking about the idea that stories are the most impactful way to change things. I wasn't saying, while it's true that I do want that I would like to tell the best story to change the world for the better. But I wasn't talking about it. I was talking about the idea that if you wanted to change the world the most impactful way because you're changing consciousness, you have to tell people a story. I think that that's correct.
Maybe we're both wrong, and either the changing of all consciousness or the elimination of all consciousness. Consciousness is the world by my definition. All human consciousness is the world. That's how I'm calling it, just to me. Maybe they're both just as big of a change.
What, death and story?
Death and changing in your psyche. I don't think I can take your stance that I'm not trying to say you're wrong. I'm over here making my own decision kind of a thing on my pedestal. I don't think I could say telling a story that changes everybody's whatever is more of an impact than everybody just not existing. I don't know if I can say that.
So again, that's not what I said. I said, obviously this only works if people are alive. So obviously if you just get rid of everything, then that doesn't matter. I said, let's assume
you're trying to say that if everybody, I get what you're saying. You're trying to say if everybody is dead, then there is no existence.
Right.
And then
So
we're
then
not
it doesn't
talking
matter.
about the world anymore.
So functional knowledge. That's what I'm saying.
If that were to hold up for me, I'd have to say the world is like the planet or something. And existence isn't huge. I understand what you're trying to say. All right. So assuming we have to maintain human consciousness.
Yes.
Of those options to change the world, the most story. I get it.
It's basically changing the world in our terms of definition is guiding the consciousness of people, the culmination of consciousness. It's guiding it. Would you disagree?
Would you agree? Influencing collective consciousness would be the biggest change to the world. Well, yeah. I mean,
guiding it.
Influence, guide, change, impact, whatever word. Sure. I can't think of a bigger one.
Mm. I think story is the best way to guide consciousness.
I'm not willing to argue against it.
I can't think of a bigger one.
Yeah, maybe there's a synonym for story, but I think that's it, you know.
Yeah. I mean, you think about...
Because story kind of is everything.
A story is technically...
you can't say religion and say it's not a story, you know. As an example.
Or dogma. Dogma.
Whatever. Or science.
Politics is a story.
Sure. Everything's a story. Right. That's how we not just communicate, it's how we exist.
The most compelling story wins. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the most compelling story wins.
I think, what was his name? Well, I think I remember his name, but I don't know if I want to cite him, but it's not me saying this. Hitler. I'm kidding.
Mein Kampf.
That's the one. No, I was making that up. I think he said human beings are the only creatures in the world that tell stories, which is why they're so interesting. And I was like, oh, yeah. Which really isn't that significant of a statement that I think about it, but I remember hearing that and thinking that was kind of profound at the time. Mm-hmm. We're also the only species that brushes our teeth and flosses them. So what does that really mean? I'm just trying to make it, I was trying to be crass. Anyway, do we need to jump back to, would you want to change the world? Or are we going to start honing in on how you might change the world or how you might want to?
So I was trying to just talk about things generally without getting into what I want to do.
Without you personally.
Well, because first of all, it's not very interesting what I want to do. It's like what person doesn't want to do what I do unless they're, animus possessed in a different way than I am. I think everybody, if they could, would make things a little bit better for everybody.
Most people.
Or at least some people maybe would only want that in the way that it's convenient to them. Maybe it's self-serving, but I think everybody would make things better if they could. So it's not so interesting to just talk about what I want.
Did you ask the question originally? I think it was you. We were talking about some bullcrap for 5 minutes, and then you went to something about how do you want to change the world? Whatever. I'm trying to remember the exact question. It sucks after like 20 minutes. I can't remember.
Yeah, we're talking about something that's too hard. we need to do easy.
What we're trying to do is we're trying to acknowledge, or I'm trying to acknowledge that the question is very hard and give an answer anyway. Like, this is why it's hard, but here's my dumb answer. That's what I'm trying to get to. I thought I did that like 10 minutes ago and said, well, I know this is really complicated, but generally, low IQ, Miss America answer. This is what I want. Now you can pick each other apart.
Now, what I do think would be potentially interesting, or at least new information, would be our strategy in doing that. Because it's not so incredible to say.
But it's personal, and you seem to be disinterested in your own way that you might want to change the world. But do you want to go ahead and explore it now? Okay, well, you go first.
I've said mine in a lot of different ways. I think that because of my base belief of that guiding consciousness, the best way to do that is with the story. I think that my theory is that if I had figured out somehow the best story, exactly. I've talked about this a lot.
We had this very specific conversation last week,
before or something. I don't know.
And I was making the comparison that the perfect song or the really good songs exist and they resonate with all of us. We may not know it's measured. It's measurable. Sorry.
Right.
There must be a better good story that hasn't been told, that can be told, that you could come up with that could change the world for the better, generally speaking. Okay. Right.
Yeah. Basically, my theory is that if you told the best story, if one told the best story, then whoever it does resonate with would be changed for the better. So maybe his best story involves a song or whatever. But it's incumbent on people to create the stories.
Here's a question,
put them in paper.
And I'm half tearing you down, which I know is kind of my job, I think.
Yeah.
I think that the Christ story is the best story, and there will never be a better one. Unfortunately, and I don't think you're going to come up with a better one than that. Would you agree, or would you go, I think there is a better story than the Christ story?
In some sense, I both agree and disagree. And
I won't take it as hubris at all. If you no, I have a better story than that, or I think there is a better story than that.
I don't want to be like one of the new thought
philosophers.
I don't want to be one of those people who just has in his head that it's old news, so it doesn't work anymore. I don't believe that at all. I do believe you can modernize old stories. And that doesn't to say that any story that I could create or a person could create that is based on the Christ story would ever be better than that actual story, because I don't know if it would be.
I understand what you're saying.
I think that story...
You can't do it without using the Christ story, it sounds like that way.
I think you could tell a more interesting story 1,000 times over. Now, the fact that I believe that story's true makes it the best story. Anyway, but you can tell that story in a way that's technically untrue, that's way more entertaining or better than that story, but it's still the same story, you know?
I admit my bias to liking the Christ story so much, partially because I believe the story, but I think literarily it is the best story also. But what do I know about the English language and stories? Can you think of what some other, what's the word, normal person might think is the best story?
Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter.
Okay,
those are
fair.
They're up there.
Of course, they're derived, or the Christ story came first, but to argue against myself and what you might say, a modernized version doesn't make it inferior. It can.
A lot of people say like Dances with Wolves. A lot of people say...
Well, I was trying to defend you there.
There's some weird favorite stories that people have.
Well, not
I say Avatar: The Last Airbender, honestly.
Not favorite, best. Like if you were to ask them, what do you think objectively is the best story that exists? Maybe you recognize you don't like. For example, I love the Book of Eli. I realize objectively it's not a 10 movie. Shawshank Redemption is a better technical, just like it's a technically good story, technically good song, whatever. What do you think if you ask somebody, what do you think objectively is the best story? And they don't believe in the Christ story.
Shawshank is not a bad answer.
I think some people are capable of saying, oh, the Christ story is compelling and it's got good elements. I don't believe any of it. I think that might be the best story that anyone's ever come up with, even though it's fake. They can say that, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you, besides the Christ story, I can't think of anything that comes close is what I'm getting at. It permeates literally everything. basically every. Well, I guess evolution's a story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a good
evolution is a good story. That's a cool story. I'm trying to, I don't believe in it, but again, objectively, in that story, you're the hero, and I think you're God in that story. Who doesn't want to be God? That's how I interpret it. You came out of all of this, and you are so great that you exist because of all the obstacles you had to overcome, the DNA, whatever. You're God, and you're awesome. I think it's a really optimistic story. Some people can. So you don't seem to interpret it that way with your face. You could take that much more nihilistically. The world is hell. It's chaos. Nothing matters.
Well, I don't think that people are the hero of the evolution story. I think luck is basically. Luck is the hero because we're lucky. And you get to be like top of the list, but I don't think that like God in this story of evolution is that. It's more science is the God of evolution. Now, in some ways, I know we've talked about evolution before. In some ways, we think that it's not very good science. In some ways, it's amazing science because it's like the best minds have worked on it for a long time and they've tried to bolster up this story. And they can in a lot of ways. There's a lot of good evidence for it, like countless good evidence. Now, it's complicated. It's complicated.
Unless you want to talk about how evolution is a good story that is on par with the Christ story, we need to jump back another level back to how you might change the world.
Well, I answered my version of that question. Your turn. It's your turn though.
I gotta think about what you said, and you also I did answer, and then you challenged it, and you said, "Let me think." I'm thinking out loud. Sorry, I'm not trying to get your cue. I'm just
maybe I can provide framework.
Nope, I can remember. I'll let you know when I fail. I said I want to make people feel better or not suffer as much. And then you said, or be happier, specifically is the word happy. And you said, well, how do you think that being happy is better? Is being happy a good thing? Fair question. I don't know that. I do think that it's different. If you want happiness for yourself, I think it's different if you want happiness for other people. Happiness for yourself could be taken as entirely selfish. Happiness for others, it's much harder to take as entirely selfish and therefore has a better chance of being more good or noble. And the more simple true fact for me is the fact that I can't, with my means, come up with a better way to make the world have less suffering, however it is I define it. It's the best answer I can come up with. For example, practically, yeah, that's the word. Practically, if I make a video that makes people, like 1 million people saw it and they laughed for 5 minutes, and I know that they liked it because they said so, I feel great. And I've done these exercises in my head and have experienced lots of things. What is this? Sign language. Ideally, and I know this is what I want, because if I'm not known, nobody knew that it was me that made it. They don't know my name, my face. I made something that made people feel good. That makes me feel great. And maybe it is selfish, but I don't think it's entirely selfish. Long story short, making people happy, laugh, forget their problems at the least for a little bit. Escapism is the most crude but correct word. That's the best medicine I've come up with. I'll pursue that until I come up with better medicine.
I'm curious what you think about this. So me looking at it, that's a good, it's like what the difference between your tactic and my tactic is. I think I found it. I think I look at it from the top down, and I think you look at it from the ground up, which is useful. Both of those are useful tactics. I'm going to miss out on some details because my ideas are super broad. Tell a good story. Well, you're like, what does that mean? Even mean? On the flip side, I'm like, well, why would you start from the bottom if you know the solution is up here and then you work your way down? So like, for example, I think the problem is change the world for the better. We've already defined terms. Let's just assume you understand what I'm saying. So I think my strategy for that, I think the best way is now next level down, tell a story. Then from there, next level down is tell a good story, and then how do you tell a good story? That's the problems I have to come up with. For you, I don't think you start with the top is change the world, and then you think about how do I best change the world? I'm standing. Right. You start from here and you try to build up to change the world. I think you might find a useful exercise to think how actually what's the most effective way to change the world in the way that I want to. And then from there, build up to the next level down. It's pretty, I don't know, maybe
you're painting a picture of the sky and universe above your head, and you're trying to paint it down into where it's low enough to where you can jump and grab it. And I'm looking for things to climb on to ascend.
Yes.
No, that's how I'm picturing it visually.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Do you have your answer for the level below change the world? The thing that you're like, well, I think the best way to change the world ultimately is this. Do you have your answer? For me, it's tell a good story.
Well, it's not dissimilar. I think, I think I haven't thought about it hard at all.
I have an example.
I can remember, so go ahead.
So thinking all the way down to the level of why I think tell the story works all the way to the bottom. If maybe I don't have a story to tell, but maybe the way that I behave in my life acts out a story. And the story is this guy's a good man. That's what a good man does in his story. That's how a good man behaves. And that's a story. It's that guy gets up on, he contributes to society. He treats people kindly and he's generous. That's enacting a story. And in that way, you can embody that story in a bigger sense and tell it to everybody. Now, the people who encounter that guy, they'll see that story and it'll affect them. They'll be like, that's a good man. Anyway, that's why I think the story is technically the best way to approach that problem.
Well, I got two things to say because you asked me a question. I have the answer. I just don't know if I'm okay with it. And then you mentioned a whole other thing in my mind, which I also have an answer to. So firstly, what's my answer for what's the best way to change the world, whether I can reach it or not? And I think without thinking about it too hard, it is to tell the best story. And I think the best story is the Christ story. And if I had it my way, I'd have it so everybody at least heard the Christ story. I'd never force anything upon anyone, but like, hey, you have an opportunity to hear this story. If you haven't heard it before, I'm just going to leave this book here. That would be what I'd like to do a lot. So that exists basically. That's basically missions. Anyway, I think without thinking too hard, that's my answer for that. And secondly, you said something about how you operate. Oh, it wasn't happiness. I wish I could remember the last 15 words you'd said, which if I could rewind it, I could just grab it. But what are you talking about?
I was talking about a good man, and this is a story.
Thank you. Okay. So I haven't made the changes yet. I'm going through a lot of personal stuff, thinking about my worldview and whatever. So if my first most important statement or whatever belief is that there's enough suffering in the world, specifically how I put it, whatever. If the second belief is I need to, at the very least, not create more suffering. Then that, and if I have to live by those values, if those are the ones I believe and I'm still thinking about, that means I have to live differently. That means when I encounter a stranger, like a clerk, whatever, I have to make the effort to smile and like not be how I normally would be. Most specifically, I have to act in a way that I would not be most comfortable. It might be easiest for me to walk in and keep my head down. But if I truly believe that there should be less suffering, and that's my life's purpose, that means pick your head up and smile. So I'm trying to think about those things. The moral of the story is you kind of talked about this level, what would change the world, and you jump down to this bottom level. Like this is where I'm thinking about. That's what I've been thinking about as far as how I'm going to live to act out my story that I believe in.
It's a good observation. I actually was talking to my mom.
Which comes into act and belief and those are things I'm working on.
I was talking to my mom today about, she asked how you were, and then she asked how I was and whatever. And I was,
he's good. How are you? I'm better. I'm better. You know how I meant it.
Well, we had a talk on my birthday, and we were kind of talking about this a little bit, where you were talking about how you were like, I want to make people happy. And I was kind of challenging that, like, is happy the best thing? And you were kind of defending why you think it's good for you right now. And I kind of very brief. It was like a 3-minute conversation. I just briefly talked about that. And then I made an observation after I described it to her that I hadn't really thought of yet, but I realized how dispositionally our strengths are another way that they're different. And I thought about if cause she goes, what's he up to? And I was like, he's always working on something usually. Like sometimes he plays games, but he always finds some small work to do. Like he's fixing something on his helmet, or he's doing some maintenance on his bike, or he's organizing something. He's always working on something when I pay attention, or he has something planned in his schedule.
When you're looking, I make sure I'm doing something.
But you know what I mean? Yeah. And I said, which is the complete opposite for me. Now I said, I think your issue is that you don't have, correct me if this is wrong, but generally it's like you don't have like direction. And I think I have the opposite problem. I have all these directions where I know I want to pursue this. And I know I want to pursue this, but I don't have that inner, like day-to-day small, do every little thing like you do. I said, I think if like you taught me how to do what you do and I taught you how to do what I do, we'd be like the perfect man. Because I'd be like, you'd have all the direction that I do and you already got the day-to-day like doing thing down. And for me, I'm like, I don't know how to do things, but I sure know what I want to do all the time.
We should get married.
Well, anyway, I thought it was a funny observation.
It is funny. We are opposite in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways, our opposite things about us play to each other.
Yeah.
So it's pretty neat.
It is pretty neat. That'd be neat.
It's pretty neat.
Specifically, I think that's probably the best way I've described the difference between you and I in a while. Like you have the what do I do today thing
But
down.
again, it's kind of you said before, where you're trying to paint the sky above you and jump, and I'm trying to climb and find out what's up there. So we're literally working from opposite ends.
Yeah. Now, if you taught me how to do that thing where you just every day get a little bit done, and I taught you how to have the broader, I don't know. I don't know that that's a teachable thing. I think it's a disposition thing. That's why it's like a little bit helpless or hopeless.
And the cool thing about it is I don't think either of us are wrong for our, in some ways, I think are just banal personality differences.
Yeah.
Nothing about right or wrong. So it's
exactly. I'm jealous of yours, as I'm sure in some ways you'd be jealous of the fact that I have like the things that I do. Now, I don't know. You at one point asked, now, do you think your life is better or mine is better? And just kind of out of curiosity. And I was thinking about it, I was like, it's just different.
When was that?
On my birthday. You're like, I have a question. Do you think your life is better than mine?
Oh, I remember that now. Yeah.
And I was like, no, I mean, they're good in both ways. The way I would say it now is I wouldn't trade your mind for mine. Like, but I can recognize how for yours is way better than mine is.
And again, now I'm gonna pull us in the weeds. What's better? Better changes per
for
person.
Us, yeah.
For depending on who you are. So now we're gonna bring it back. If you're gonna make the world better, you're gonna have to impose on people what you think is better, or conglomeratively say the majority thinks that happiness is good, and forgetting that their mortal is good. Like,
I'm not dumb enough
in a lot of ways. I'll give myself this as far as like an argument, defense of myself, and what I might believe. I haven't decided yet. In a lot of ways, I'm very different from most people about most things. As a YouTuber, I'm very different, and I know it sounds all pious and shit, but I that's just objectively true. I think I can say that. And I won't list the reasons. I don't want to be too pious, but when it comes to some things, just a few things like entertaining people, I agree, and I can on good conscience. I think I haven't thought this through completely. I could on good conscience act in that way where I believe, and I think most people would agree, that the way I'm trying to make their lives better is better for us. Maybe not better for those that don't want to watch it. You understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
There's like when it comes to YouTube. Most people out there are you. I'm not you. When it comes to feeling better, there's a lot of Walters out there. You understand what I'm saying? I think maybe not everybody, but I think I can get to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But again, that's me on the ground looking up and trying to figure out.
Yeah. The good hopeful news about it is that technically there's like one surefire way to make the world better, and people talk about it. It's reductionist, but it's just like if you love people, that's just a darn good way to do it. Because that's, even if it seems like the bare minimum, that's really like it does a lot for people. So that's me being kind of cliche, but it's true.
I kind of feel like we could pick that apart, although I don't want to picking apart too long today. But the idea we could more specifically, and I'd be curious to talk about this because this is something I'm thinking through for myself. Next time I'd be talking about how you acting differently in the day-to-day life changes the world. So literally the butterfly effect of how you might change the world. So we're going to talk about some practical things. Some of it's just going to be beliefs or observations, but we might actually get to something that we can start using next time.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe. I think that'd be interesting.
My mom she was talking about how she makes soaps and stuff. And she was like, it's not, because we were talking about purpose, because for whatever reason, you and I were talking about purpose at that time. And so when I said that, and she was like, I've just been making soaps and I feel like that's got purpose. And I was like, you do? I hope it didn't sound insulting when I did that. And she's like, yeah. And she goes, and not for the reason, it's not like when I'm making the soaps, like, yes, this has purpose. But like when I give them to people, and I get a chance to catch up with them and just hear about their lives, I get to love on them in that moment. And I was like, okay. So what you're saying is that you could do basically whatever you want in life, but if you love people well, then it's going to be meaningful. And she's, that's basically, yeah. I mean, you could clean up crap off the ground, and if you're caring for people while you're doing it, then
yeah, I don't think I act on that. I think I believe it though. I'm trying to figure out that's what I believe, because if I do, then I gotta start acting on it.
Yeah. Nah.
Yeah.
You get it. You get the point.
I was going to repeat your joke and make it bad. But
we're trying to make it a big problem when there's a really, really easy answer. It's just like,
hey, we figured it out. It's love one another.
Right. It's not very exciting.
We figured it out. Yeah. That's the answer.
Wait, that's the life-changing thing we figured out in episode 77.
Holy shit. Christ said that 2,000 years ago.
Joe Biden. That's what I tell you. Tell Putin you love him.
Yeah. We did it. Yeah.
We did.
We did. That's so stupid.
It felt like
it comes back together.
It does feel like a narrative.
It felt like it concluded, like it comes back around.
Putin, we love you.
It comes to Putin.
It all goes down to Putin. That's so
Put
stupid.
that in the description of the video. It all comes back to Putin! Exclamation point.
Yeah.
Oh, whatever.
All roads lead to Putin. Oh gosh. Yeah. Prayers up for those people across the world and stuff.
And in the world next door.
Yeah, those ones too.
Yeah. Okay, well.
Call it a good one?
Yeah, call it one.
All right. Hey, you sluts. Thanks for listening to us talk about God. See you next time. Love you.